and then we will go into debate. So please, just questions for now. Councillor Rawlings, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I came along this evening because I was one of the members of the committee who made last year to issue a 1-year licence to Uber, and although the papers do give you some background in there, I thought it was appropriate that I came along and just talked through that meeting with you tonight so you had that knowledge base. I believe Councillor Luckall was on that committee with me at that time. Chair, firstly, it came to a staffing and urgency meeting because of the late application. That's why it didn't come to this committee at that time. The application was submitted late, so that was the only way it could be heard before the licence ran out. The committee was extremely concerned at that late application. So concerned that although the licence had been issued previously for a year, Uber had only been operating in York for 4 months at the time that we renewed it. There were some private sessions took place for confidential information discussed earlier, but they were not. But the decision was made in public, and therefore, on that point, Councillor Mason is somewhat wrong. Chair, we were concerned during that meeting that there were a large number of complaints that had been raised at Uber, and with a 4-month period, it had been very difficult for officers to bring those through to a conclusion and give us an informed position. Therefore, we took the approach that only 1 year was appropriate. I have to express some concerns with regards to the papers this evening, because once again, I see that there is more detail. I hope you'll be drilling down on the complaints that have been made against them and quantifying that in relation to the number of Uber cars in the area compared to York taxi firms in order to put them into context. As I see it, we're in a very similar position. Unless officers can give more detail around the complaints that have been made, I question whether we have moved on in the last year. Personally, little comments. I have had some personal concerns with regards seeing Uber vehicles in the York area. These relate to traffic issues and wrong turns and making it in York, and parking in car parks awaiting fares and parking spaces which should be available for residents. I appreciate those comments anecdotal and may well not be able to be taken as a substantive comments in your decision making, but I would ask that you reflect on the decision that was made last and think carefully about the detail in the report on the complaints and how they have been handled. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds left, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's it.
Chair, I'm happy to take any questions from anybody who wasn't on that committee.
Does any member have any questions to put to Councillor Rawlings based on what he's just said? No?
Very easy. Thank you for putting that first as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then the second left in, if you'd like to take a seat. So you have 30 seconds remaining. I'll ask you to sum up and then I'll invite members to ask you any questions at that point. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Are we on? Okay. Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Safdin. I'm the chairman for York Hackney Carriage Association. I'm sure some of you may have heard of me. I'm sure no doubt about why you should not renew the Uber licence for York. Many of my colleagues today will outline various readings before you today. Whilst York only has a handful of drivers licensed, Uber are doing exactly what they are very, very good at, and that is systematically abusing the local laws and explicitly by the use of out-of-town vehicles of many who have no knowledge of our city, our roads, illegally applying for hire on taxi ranks and breaking our traffic laws repeatedly. Furthermore, and against the current cross-border law, they sit on double yellow lines and wait excessively for a would-be customer. We have evidence for many of these occasions and video evidence too with regards to the illegal take for fares in our city. Staying in the name of all taxi trade in York that has enjoyed an excellent reputation thus far. Prior to any licence being considered, you should ask them the following question: who is the actual contract with when a customer makes a booking? Is it actually with the company Uber, or is it actually with the driver? Because as a current Hackney carriage driver, when I'm hailed, my contract is directly with the customer. whereas with Uber, they're unable to quantify that, as really demonstrated by 9 other authorities. Uber made an application for licence, including Hull, and when these authorities asked the very same question that I pose here, Uber withdrew their application for licence because they were unable to clarify who the actual contract is with. And I'm happy to clarify that later if you wish. The trade does not object to fair competition. However, Uber are not a fair player in the public transport world in UK. Should the committee not be fully satisfied and have any doubts, then I cannot see how the licence can be renewed for any period. Therefore, I urge you to be the most proactive members by refusing the application today and offer no licence until you are fully satisfied. Now, I do have a petition to hand over, and petition is for safeguarding of passengers, which reads, we the undersigned would like to support the motion for City of York Council to restrict out-of-town vehicles working in our city.
You have 30 seconds, Mr.
Uber licence to be renewed. Uber are a danger to vulnerable members of the public. They seek to take advantage by applying for hire without bookings, charge excessive surcharges, and have individuals working for them whom have no knowledge of our city. We would like all drivers registered with the local private hire company or be a hackney carriage driver. We do
Time's
not
up,
want
Mr.
Uber
Dent.
in
Thank you
York.
very much. If you'd like to, can you take the petition? What's Mr. Okay.
1353.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Din? Councillor Wells?
Can you just clarify that matter, the issue about hiring and whether the contract's with the driver or Uber or the company?
Yeah, it's a question that was recently asked at the point of the application. Who is the actual contract with? For example, I'm a hackney carriage driver, so you as a customer, if you, member of the public, walk up to a hackney carriage rank, your contract is directly with me to provide that once I've taken that journey from A to B, London or etc. Whereas with an Uber, they're unable to quantify who the contract is with. Is the contract actually with Uber UK, Uber Britannia, or Uber at Clifton Moor? Or is the contract with away from London to work in our city as a transport for London? So they're unable to do that. Who is the contract with? And on many occasions, we have drivers actually just sitting in the street, just picking up a customer without a booking. So who would be liable if anything went wrong? Uber or TfL or the driver?
Councillor Wells, can I suggest that you ask Neil, the Uber head of Cities Northern Support, Neil McGonigal, sorry I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, when he comes, because he will be the best person to ask that question since it's his licence that he's applying for. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Lee Ward. Do we have Lee Ward? Is he today? Thank you very much. So, Mr. Ward, you have 3 minutes, and when 2.5 minutes is gone, I'll ask you to sum up, and then everybody will get the chance to ask questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Today's meeting is to decide if Uber, the company, are fit and proper to hold an operator's licence in York. I am sure that they will tell you about the legal fight with TfL, but that's nothing to do with York. You are here today to decide on the fit and proper status of Uber, the company, for its residents, visitors and students, which you are responsible for the safety of. Uber is a trading name which involves several entities, but all work together: Uber Britannia, Uber London and Uber BV, the tax avoiding arm base of the Netherlands. In the report, it states that Uber London are not part of this application. I beg to differ. It's all the same company. Also the same app is across the country. Are Uber fit and proper? They have been refused licences in Reading, North Tyneside and Cardiff. They have been suspended in Sheffield and not in London. They have walked away from their applications in Crawley, Conway, Gateshead, Harrogate, Oxford, Preston, Wokingham, Sandwell and Worcester, and that's only to my knowledge. Why? Because the question has been asked who accepts the booking, the driver or Uber. In 2 legal cases, the answer has been that Uber accept the booking after the driver has. That's backfilling and illegal. Almost simultaneously does not mean before. This is the same as Section 19 of York's Operators' Conditions, a driver involved in the acceptance of a booking. I'm sure that Uber's sales team, because that's what they are, will try to choose their words to make you think otherwise. The fact is that twice they have stated in the court of law booking is accepted by the driver, once in Canada and another in the UK tribunal regarding workers' rights. If Uber are so fit and proper, why are we sat here today? This company has so many lawsuits it's beyond belief. It's also admitted to it being hacked and did nothing about it. To this day, Uber Britannia is not even registered on the ICO database for data protection. They simply don't care. Ask yourselves this, why so many court cases in so many countries? What makes them fit and proper here, but not anywhere else? They will tell you about customers that have downloaded their app. They will tell you about the amount of customers that use the system. They won't tell you if it's legal or not. They may tell you about the investment in electric vehicles. They won't tell you it's the drivers and customers who are paying for them. They won't talk about the Indian lady who was raped and they got the medical records to fight her back with. They won't tell you about being hacked and keeping it quiet while they paid off the hackers. They won't tell you about all the sexism within the company. What they will tell you is carefully selected words with half-truths in them.
30 seconds, Mr.
They will
Ward.
also tell you what you think you want to hear. It's up to you to hear what they are saying. So ask them to prove if the booking platform is legal and it's not the driver who accepts the booking. Please, ask them. They usually just walk away and make the decision for you. Remember their company motto, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, members, do any of you have any questions for Mr. Ward? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So the next on the list is Wendy Loveday. Wendy, there you are.
Hi.
So you have 3 minutes, and in 3 minutes I'll ask you to sum up. Okay, and then we'll ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have some important numbers for you. 57 million, 13 and 72. 57 million is the number of accounts that were hacked. 13 is the number of months that it took Uber to finally admit that they had not only been hacked, but that also paid a ransom to the hackers. 13 months consist of 9,360 hours. They should have reported the breach of their security within 72, meaning that they sat on this information for 9,200 hours longer than is legally allowed. Passenger safety has always been a major issue for us where Uber are concerned. But now it's not just their physical safety, it's their online safety that's at risk. York Council need to show Uber that they care about the safety of their citizens and visitors, even if Uber choose to disregard it completely. This breach of security had already occurred at the point that York Council renewed Uber's licence last year. You granted them in good faith, based on the information that you had then, which did not include this massive cover-up. Don't make the same mistake again, only to find out 13 months further down the line about something else that's going on right now that you don't know about. Don't wait to see what little gem they have in store for you. Just say no to the licence. If somebody asks the right questions, they will just walk away. Let me remind councillors that the LGA handbook states that you only have to have soft intelligence to refuse a licence. You only have to believe that they are not fit and proper. You do not have to prove this. I quote from this year's Uber relicensing application that it was noted last year that if a licence was not granted, Uber could still operate in York using out-of-town drivers, which would mean even less control over who was operating in the city. Well, they've totally proven that they cannot recruit York drivers. So we have continued to encourage out-of-town drivers to come and work in York, running roughshod over our city, not caring about the consequences, and this is absolutely no reason whatsoever to relicense them. Uber have deliberately deceived the world, and they will continue to do so. Do not be a party to this deception. You are our council. So members, please remember these 3 numbers. 57 million accounts hacked. 13 months before Uber owned up to paying a ransom, breaking the law and keeping it quiet. And only 3 need to convince you not to give them a licence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You still had 15 seconds, but we...
Thank you.
I noticed that you were winding up anyway, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Does any member have any questions? Pardon me for Wendy Loveday. Councillor Mason.
In terms of the 72 hours, where does that come from, do you know?
It's in the legislation that if you have a breach in security, you have to report it within 72 hours.
No? Anybody else? No?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anthony Green. Are you here, Anthony? Thank you. Let's sit down. So you have 3 minutes, and I'll.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes, and I'll tell you when you're remaining, and ask you to sum up. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. The need to regulate the taxi industry was born in the unscrupulous way individuals and companies maximize it by ignoring such things as vehicle maintenance, having inadequate insurance, and not worrying much about who was driving. As a result of this, the general public demanded local authority and take action. And as a consequence, legislation and regulation developed over the years, with each authority building its own particular needs and safeguard its local population. So we currently find ourselves in a situation where we have cars and drivers operating in our city who aren't known to you. You find yourselves in a position of having to cede your responsibilities to other licensing authorities and hope they have the same standard as you. Unfortunately, we know that isn't true. Today, you are being asked to grant the renewal of Uber's operator's licence, a company that has been excluded from countries and cities around the world, had licence applications in the UK refused and revoked in London and now in Sheffield. The contempt this company shows towards laws and regulations internationally, nationally and locally is astounding. From stealing the medical records of an Uber driver's rape victim in an attempt to discredit her, renting faulty cars to their drivers in full knowledge of the risk to drivers and passengers, their greyball software to help them evade enforcement, information from police regarding serious sexual assaults and other crimes committed by Uber drivers, and the cyber hack resulting in 2 UK Uber customers and drivers having their personal information stolen, only for Uber to pay a $100,000 ransom, then said nothing for a whole year before the information was leaked. Please bear in mind that Fred Jones, Uber's head of cities, immediately reached out to the public to condemn TfL for refusing to relicense Uber in London, yet remained silent on such a serious matter. There are numerous examples of this behaviour, and by its own action, I believe Uber clearly demonstrates it is not a fit and proper person, and that of break things now, apologise later, indicates it's not to be trusted when assurances are. Indeed, on the day it launched in York, assurances were given that Uber would only use York registered drivers and cars, and despite repeated promises to its drivers, was picking up at taxi ranks and in the train station in particular, they still do so.
30 seconds, please.
They aren't to be trusted. That's me.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions for the speaker?
Okay,
No?
thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Jim Love. Are you there? Hello, Jim. You have 30 seconds, and when you have 3 minutes, and you have 30 seconds. When you have 30 seconds, I'll ask you to sum up. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jim Love, Chairman of Fleetways Taxis in York. I feel compelled to speak to you tonight. I have serious concerns for customers, and I think there are rules for York companies which don't seem to apply to Uber. If I told my drivers to take the following routes, I'd like to know what would happen to Fleetways Taxis. These are all direct routes with no pick-up. For instance, York Station to Dunnington. It's simple, through the city, to Hull Road, across the city and on to Dunnington. Checked it, it's 5.5 miles. The operator, Uber, tells their drivers to go out of York via Tadcaster Road, onto the bypass and round the A64 to the Hull Road turn. It's 10.1 miles. There are no traffic excuses. This was 12:30 at night. There's another one, York Station to Melrose Gate. It's approximately 3 miles. Again, it's simple and the vehicle should be nowhere near the bypass. tells the drivers to again use Tadcaster Road and onto the bypass and around the A64 to Hull Road and then back into York, 10 miles. This was 9 p.m. in the evening. It's robbery, and it's the operator telling them to do this. There's even an Uber route suggesting drivers river via a slipway at the side of the park in to reach. It's here. I'll show you them all. Can you use an operator that tells drivers to go the long way around, or do you make allowances because it's Uber? If I told my drivers to go the long way around, we'd lose our licence. One final epic journey, Water End, a journey of 1.3 miles. You could come via Lehman Road, Rugier Street, Micklegate and over Ouse Bridge. Simple. The lady wasn't from York and neither was the Uber driver. No pickups on the way. This turned into a 4-minute journey. The fare with the York company was £7. The lady was on and the fare was £13.06. Not bad, just £6 more. But Uber was surge pricing, so she incurred an additional £47.02, making a grand total of £60.08 for a 1.3 mile journey. Let me say that, £60.08 for a 1.3 mile journey.
30 seconds, Mr. Love.
We'd have taken us to Scarborough for that. Her Uber statement confirms it. It confirms it was 5 miles for a 1.3 mile journey. I've only got 3 minutes. We know many more examples, but how many thousands of these do we not know about? Companies do care, and it's demoralising to learn that these things that Uber actually get away with, and that they tell their drivers to go the wrong way. Is this a fit and proper company? Say it again, would you give Fleetways a licence if I told our drivers to go the long way around? I doubt it, so why give Uber one? I have the details here, and all the paperwork, if you'd like to see them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Any members have any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just to clarify thank you. The sheets of paper that you have in front of you, is that the evidence that Uber is telling their drivers a long way around?
There's on this page was a proposed route which you would get on the app saying which way the driver's going to take you, and that was round the bypass to get to Dunnington. And there's another one which was an act where the driver left York Station and went out on the A64 Tadcaster Road, right around the bypass to the Hull Road turn off, then back into York.
Okay, it's interesting evidence. Have you obtained that?
Because people get this evidence on their phones. It clearly shows them what they've done. They're shooting themselves in the foot. There's a non-existent bridge that goes over the side of the Viking Hotel, the Park Inn. This is an extra one I've put in, just a loop around where it shows it's far from the direct route. And then the final one is £6.08 for a 5 mile, which when you look at it on a map is 1.3 miles. And I know for a fact that there was no pickups on any of these, additional pickups.
Thank you.
Would you like to leave those on the table, Mr. Love, so that people can have a look at them?
Do you want them passing?
No, just leave them on the table. If people want to look at them during discussion, they can. Anybody else? Thank you. Councillor Mason.
I was just going to say, the paperwork you've left us, is there a way of showing that is the route Uber has told them to go, opposed to how the drivers chose to go? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because this is one that says, thank you for your trip with Uber. The blue route marks the route which they actually took, so that's taken. That one is a proposed route which you get initially.
Anybody? Any other members have any questions? Oh, he's gone now anyway. Never mind. The next person on the list is Glenn Jardine, but I don't know that Glenn has arrived. No, right. And the same with Bill Brolly. Is Bill Brolly here? Slipped in through the net? No? Okay. Lynn Brooke then. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. You have 30 seconds left. I'll ask you to sum up. Thank you.
Chair, councillors, my name is Lynn Brooke and I'm the GMB trade union organiser responsible for members who are private hire and hackney drivers in York. Let me give you some concerning information about Uber and their operations. They fail to properly regulate their drivers for background checks. Uber drivers continue to use the city's ranks to apply for hire. Uber drivers are seen driving illegally, for example, driving the wrong way down one-way streets in York. Uber do not have wheelchair-accessible cars. Uber fail to provide basic rights to their drivers in relation to pay, holidays, and health and safety, and the Employment Tribunal and Employment Appeal Tribunal has found that this is illegal. They aim to operate from an office at Clifton Moor in York, which is unmanned. In October 2016, Uber's systems were hacked and 57 million worldwide and 2.7 million UK users and drivers' accounts were stolen. This was only uncovered due to the press, which was confirmed by Uber some 13 months after they paid a $100,000 ransom. Who knows if this would ever have come to light if it hadn't been leaked. These are just a small list of issues which seem to follow where Uber operates. The private hire and hackney carriage drivers of York are trained to the highest standards to look after the residents and visitors of York. The visitors to this great city are lifeblood and should be safely taken to their destinations by those drivers who have the best knowledge of how to get their fares to where they want to be using the shortest, safest and cheapest routes. They are the private hire and hackney carriage drivers of York. At this meeting on the 13th of November 2017, in the minutes, it's noted that the council as licensing authority had a duty to make sure that taxi operators were fit and proper to hold a York licence. I would say that all the evidence shows that Uber is not fit and proper. A number of local authorities around the country are considering whether to reissue Uber with licences. Everyone seems to be looking for a lead on this most important issue. So I would say to you, as the elected representatives of the people, to be leaders, set an example to the rest of the UK and deny a renewal of this licence. Thank you.
Ms Brooke, thank you. Ms Brooke, you mentioned at the beginning of your speech that carry out background checks on its drivers. Can you evidence that?
This is evidence that's been in through the GMB in other regions where we operate, and we actually look after, ironically, Uber drivers are being improperly trained and treat illegally.
None of those cases in York?
No.
No. Because there are drivers in York for Uber?
There aren't so many, and we kind of can keep a track on them much better in York, but there is evidence of that throughout the country.
Is it that they're failing to carry out?
It's usually the background checks on criminal activities that certainly aren't being carried out, and there's evidence of that.
But is that not the licensing authority's responsibility? Or do Uber have a responsibility? As a,
no,
for example, Fleetways, would they check out?
Uber would be expected to do. All the other hackney and private hire drivers in York carry out those checks for their drivers.
Okay, so as well as getting a DBS by the licensing authority when you apply for your licence, the firm that you would work for would also do an extra check?
With their employer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No? Thank you. Mike Palmer. There you are. Hello, Mike. and when you get to the 30 seconds remaining, I'll ask you to sum up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councillors, it's nice to speak to you again. You're here today to judge Uber as a whole, not to judge of the empty York office to hold a licence. A hard task because the office is a beachhead for York for the larger company. Crimes and misdeeds are laid firmly at the feet of the licence applicant, who is willfully, negligently and maliciously supplementing his unworkable handful of local in clear abuse of the cross-border hiring law, as Uber are doing up and down the country. This action knowingly lowers the safety of the city. This is a fact that even the person representing Uber cannot deny. The person who speaks for Uber isn't a taxi driver. They're not an operator as we know in York. They're probably a lawyer, a salesperson, a PR specialist sent to our city to sell you snake oil. They will lie to your faces in here, our council seat. This person will say safe, reliable, affordable. All words we, you, they and the public know to be untrue. Uber are not safe. They drag drivers from all over England to come here and look at their sat-navs, whilst missing important signs such as one-way street and Hackney carriage rank. They will lie to you that their global app can't perform the simple task of putting a geofence around Hackney rank at a certain time of day. Is that really hard? It's lies. Reliable is not a word that can apply to Uber York. They can't field a fleet of 10 cars a day. How can you rely on them? Another lie. There are few York drivers, like the 4,000 in London, who could find alternative companies to work for, can be welcomed to the local trade. Come on, with fares sometimes over 4 times the rate I charge, how can they say that word with straight faces? Their words are crooked, their business model is crooked, their entire premise is bent, like the laws they run roughshod over. Laws you can uphold. Laws to protect people who visit our city and those of us who wish to live here safely. When the Uber representative stands up, look into their eyes. When they say safe, affordable or reliable, look again. Do you trust them? Can you? Will you see them wilt just a little under your gaze because even they don't believe the words they're being paid to say? Nobody pays me to say this, and I say it from the heart. We've given you enough reason not to relicense Uber in York. Do not do it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. I'm not going to be able to do it as well as many of the previous speakers because I can obviously tell they're speaking from the heart as it affects their workplace. I would like to say as the Councillor for Clifton Ward, I've met with taxi drivers, representatives from the private hire associations and many passengers in my ward, and have concluded that this application from the transport tech company Uber fails the fit and proper test to be awarded a renewed licence. I want York to embrace innovation and new technology and to be on for exciting new companies that help residents by providing services that are accessible and affordable. However, all companies in our city must play by the rules and adhere to the high standards we expect, particularly when it comes to the safety of customers. I have serious concerns about public safety with the way the company in question is operated in various locations, both locally and in locations right across the globe since it started up. I feel that Uber's approach and conduct demonstrate a lack of responsibility in relation to reporting serious criminal offences and the fundamentals of obtaining medical certificates and driver background checks. Nationally, there's evidence to show a lack of response to serious sexual allegations made against Uber drivers elsewhere in the UK, and so the safety and security of the public. The apparent to prevent Uber being subject to regulatory checks indicates the lengths the company may go in the level of scrutiny and checks that every taxi and private hire firm should be subject to if the public is to have trust and confidence in it as a provider of local transport. The company has shown itself unable to data, as we previously heard from previous speakers, and there's every chance, of course, that the breach included details of people living here in York. Locally, there is obvious growing concern about illegal pickups, applying for hire, lack of clear enforcement about Uber cabs using the taxi ranks, and also the preferential treatment by this authority on race days at the Knavesmire, which is not fair or equitable to the wider private hire trade in the city. And I am under no illusions that rejecting Uber's application will remove the problems associated with the way the company operates,
30 seconds,
given the Deregulation Act, but nevertheless there's an important message we should send about this city and the way we operate. Our standards are high and we should to maintain those standards and send a message that they should not be undermined. We cannot and should not simply look the other way when there are practices that could be putting the public's safety at risk. Providing an innovative service is not an excuse for being unsafe, and I therefore urge members of this committee to reject the application.
Any members have questions for Councillor Myers? Sorry, I didn't notice who indicated first, so we'll go with Councillor Taylor then.
Thank you. Danny, you mentioned some specialist software which has been used, you claim is being used to prevent regulatory. A little bit further?
Yeah, thank you. It's clear that there's a piece of software called Greyball, which the Uber company claims hasn't been used in the UK, but it seems clear that it has been used elsewhere worldwide, and it certainly prevents local authorities from scrutiny and regulation of its service.
Right, I'm still unclear how that works, but
it seems like
me a bit more.
It seems like an extension to its innovative software.
Okay.
Councillor Mason.
Thanks. You mentioned there have been particular assaults where the operator hadn't complied or hadn't, I don't know what the word is, dealt with the council properly or hadn't liaised with the council properly. Which authorities is that, so we can pick that up with the operator later?
Yeah. So this is in particular relation to a Metropolitan London police officer's letter, the head of the taxi and private hire wing of Met Police, where he uses quite damning language to talk about 20 or 30 cases that he's aware of.
The only problem is obviously that's TfL, I imagine. Have you got anything that's outside of London, any other authorities?
I think that would be a good question.
Anybody else have any questions for Councillor Myers? No? So our final speaker is Neil McGonigal. Sorry. So you have 3 minutes as well.